Alright, continuing with the Pythagorean identities, I've got an example here that's a bit of a unique one. So I'm going to show you how to do this one, and then you're probably going to recognize these when they pop up. If you take a look at this, what do you notice about that? If you remember correctly, those are, because they're exactly the same with opposite signs, we call those conjugates. Okay, and when you see conjugates, what we're going to do is multiply one of the sides, either the left-hand side or the right-hand side, by its conjugate. Okay, so let's take a look at this example. Let's work with the left-hand side. So I have 1 minus cos over sine. Now I want to end up with 1 plus cos in the denominator. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 1 plus cos. Now, why am I doing this? Well, the first reason is I hope that you're going to recognize when you see the conjugate. When you see one in the numerator, one in the denominator like this, you should recognize that you've got a conjugate situation. We're going to introduce the 1 plus cos in the denominator because that's where we want to end up. Okay, now watch what happens when we do that. If I multiply the numerator, I get 1 minus cos plus cos minus cos squared all over sine, and I'm not going to multiply. Why am I not going to multiply the sine into here? Well, I see that I want this in my final I guess term, so I don't want to kind of lose it, so I'm going to leave it there. Okay, so looking at the numerator, this cancels and I have 1 minus cos squared over sine times 1 plus cos squared. Sorry, not cos squared, just cos. Now, where do we want to end up? Somehow we need to have a sine in the numerator. But the problem is I have cosine up there. But maybe you recognize this. Alright? What is that? Well, if you remember, sine squared plus cos squared equals 1. What is sine squared? It's 1 minus cos squared. So I can change that numerator to sine squared. Now you should see where we're going. I can cancel out a sine, and I left with sine over 1 plus cos. And so we're done. Okay, so there's two new things in there. First of all, there's the conjugate, and then there was this idea of using 1 minus cos squared as sine squared. Okay. Let's look at this one. Is this a conjugate question? Well, these do look like they're conjugates, except that they're both in the denominator and they're not on opposite sides of the equals. So this is not a conjugate question. This is just, let's perform this operation. Let's add these two fractions. So I've got two fractions that I want to add. I need common denominators. 1 minus cos, 1 plus cos. 1 minus cos, 1 plus cos. So what did I do to the first fraction? I multiplied by 1 plus cos. And what did I do to the second fraction? I multiplied by 1 minus cos. Okay, if I put together the numerator, I get 2. Hey, that's kind of nice. Look what I end up with over there. And then what's on the bottom? Well, if I multiply that, I get 1 minus cos plus cos minus cos squared. And those cancel out. So I'm left with 2 over 1 minus cos squared. And that is 2 over sine squared, which is 2 cosecant squared. Okay, because don't forget 1 over sine squared. This is cosecant squared. All right. So, got a couple of examples here that are almost identical to the ones we just did. You notice there's a conjugate here. So I want you to try this one on your own. See if you can come up with the right answer. And then if you look at D, this one is almost identical to the one we just did a couple minutes ago as well. Okay, so go ahead and try those two. When you're done, come back and we'll do it together. So I recognize a conjugate. I'm going to multiply by 1 minus sine over 1 minus sine. By the way, I could work on the right-hand side just as well. It would give me the same thing. Okay. So, what do I want to end up with here? Well, I want to end up with a 1 minus sine in the numerator, so I'm not going to multiply this. The denominator, since they're conjugates, I know that the middle terms will cancel out. I'm not going to do those two middle terms. I'm just going to write 1 minus sine squared. Okay. So then, this is cos squared. And now I can cancel out one of the coses. And I'm left with sine times 1 minus sine over cos. Where do I want to end up? I want to end up with cotan. Well, what's sine over cos? That's tan. Is that what we want? Not quite. You're thinking, wait a second. I know that tan is 1 over cotan. So I can rewrite this as 1 minus sine and cotan. Okay. Now, I don't know how far you got on that one on your own. I'm guessing you probably you knew to multiply by the conjugate, but maybe you got stuck at the end. Try this one again tomorrow. See if you can get it. See if you can remember the steps. Because you're going to find that the more of these you do, the more familiar they seem. Okay. Got some homework with the worksheet on identities. Let's keep going with that. Okay, start with number 4 and keep going. See how far you can get. I just wanted to do this one first. So we need common denominators here to add these two fractions. 1 minus sine, 1 plus sine, 1 minus sine, 1 plus sine. So what did I do to the numerator? I multiplied by 1 plus sine. And what did I do to the numerator here? I multiplied by 1 minus sine. So, what does this give me? The denominator is going to be 1 minus sine squared. You may have seen that and right away wrote cosine squared there. Great, if you can skip a step, that's okay. Here I'm going to get cos plus cosine plus cos minus cosine. And those two cancel out. So they end up with 2 cos over cos squared, which is 2 over cos, which is 2 secant. Okay? I think I'll stop there again and let you try and do a few of them for homework. We'll come back and do a few more of these.